okay, it's time somebody said it. I hate Hassan Piker. And I think that he is not good for the left. I think that he is not good for Democrats. And recently he's been in drama again about something that he said. I think it was on some kind of podcast. I think it might have been his own. But either way, we're going to talk about it and talk about why Hassan Piker is not good for progressive movements. And so basically, this is the clip just to show full context for what he said.
For J.D. Vance or Gavin Newsom?
Well, I'd have to vote for Gavin Newsom,
Me
of course,
too.
100%.
I wouldn't blink. What about you, Hassan?
I'd probably vote third party.
You would?
Oh, yeah. I mean, at that point, it doesn't even matter. Like, because my policy on this is the same as like my refusal to endorse Kamala Harris. The reason why I did not endorse Kamala Harris was because she did things that were not only unproductive, but also unconscionable. And I still stand on that. I still talk about it all the time because people constantly bring it up. They're like, you didn't sufficiently like promote Kamala Harris. You're the reason why she lost. And I'm like, I am incapable. There is no singular force in this country that is capable of making or breaking an election. And if that was real, then it is the most idiotic thing not to listen to my demands. But everybody knows that that's not real, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he's making the claim here that either he's not consequential, or if he is consequential, then you have to capitulate to what he's advocating for. And let's see if he says like what he's advocating for, I guess.
If I had this singular force to be able to make Kamala Harris the president, then Kamala Harris should be coming to me every day and being like, let me do a collab with you, please.
Totally.
Right? That's not the case, of course. And they know it. That's why they didn't do it. But the campaigns are always responsible for whether or not they are able to win the crowds, win the population over, and combat against the couch. Not necessarily even against the Republican Party, but usually you're fighting against the couch, people who just don't go out and vote. And for me, the way I see it is if the Democratic establishment makes this decision one more time, just as they did with Hillary Clinton, just as they did with Kamala Harris, and in some ways just as they did with Joe Biden as well, which led to Trump too, then they just don't care. And there's not much I can do.
Let me tell you something. I agree with everything you say, but as a person who lived in a red state for 50 years.
Get him, Jen.
I would crawl through 10 feet of concrete to vote for Gavin Newsom, even though I think he's duplicitous, a hypocrite, a thirst trap, hungry for power, all of the things that you say, and harms the Democratic Party and sets the psychological soil to be more prey to fascism. All of that I agree with. But there are so many young, queer, black, brown, marginalized people in red states. And even though this corporate Democrat is, you see it in a long-term game. In the short-term game, a President Newsom over a President J.D. Vance.
So here's what I'll say about what I think Jen was going to say, which is that Gavin Newsom, in the grand scheme of things, is a lot safer of a vote and safer for people by and large than J.D. Vance if he were to run, right? And so that's what this person in this tweet is saying, is that when asked if he'd vote for Gavin Newsom or J.D. Vance for president, Hasan says he would vote third party. This proves Hasan doesn't care about any of the marginalized groups that he pretends to support. All he cares about is taking money from them so he can buy more outfits for streams. So unsurprisingly to most people, I don't actually hate Hasan, and I actually agree with him on what he is saying here. And here's what we have, as proof, is that we have proof that Kamala Harris might have lost because of Gaza. Gaza was a massive thing that happened during her campaign. And the reality of the situation is that when Kamala Harris ran, there was no primary. Biden uniquely waited to announce that he was not running for president, so there wouldn't even be a primary, so that there wouldn't be the time that Kamala Harris would have to put her name down on the thing. The economy, Medicare, Social Security, immigration and border security, healthcare, abortion policy, and 5% doesn't know. And so Hasan is actually right. There's a lot of reason to hate Hasan. But his take on that is not incorrect, is that the Democratic Party has not learned its lesson. But here's the thing about the Democratic Party, is the Democratic Party doesn't want to learn its lesson. And that's what's important to understand here. If it was a big enough block in order to capitulate the leftists, then why didn't they do that? And Hasan mentions that in a later tweet. He says, then bend the knee to the left then. You already did with Zoran. The midterms just started and y'all are crying about the general. Do y'all really want free healthcare? Do you want free college? Do you want to stop Israel? I'll vote for anyone that sincerely believes in making that happen. And there are a lot of people like this. I am one of these people that believes that I don't want another person that is going to enable Israel to launch all these bombs, at Palestine, the genocide in Palestine. I think it's a pretty big deal. I think it's a big enough deal that it might have cost Kamala Harris the election. And Gavin Newsom, that's gruesome Newsom, baby. He's known for hating homeless people. He's known for... Do you know how much it takes out of a politician to get out of their home and to get out of their office and actually do something for the people? What about to the people? This is him clearing homeless encampments. Is that it is being made very clear, apparently, by Hasan and other leftists and liberals even, that Gavin Newsom is not their candidate. And if the Democrats put Gavin Newsom up, they will not vote for him. So I guess the question mainly is why put Gavin Newsom up? Is he the only person that can win? And the reality of the situation is there are no Democrats currently running on actual policies that will change the way that we moved forward as a country. Donald Trump, for example, ran on freeing the Jan 6ers. He ran on immigration policy. He ran on policies. The Democratic policy, Kamala Harris's campaign, was just, we will not do what they are going to do. We will do something less. If Donald Trump is going to put up fences at the border, the Democratic policy is going to use smart borders and technology and all these different things. And people forget it wasn't that long ago that the Democratic Party, Joe Biden's presidency, was willing to beat the crap out of college students that were protesting peacefully, literally at the college that they were going to, the genocide in Gaza. Here's some of the clips from it if we have forgotten. Kamala Harris did not run on getting these people out of prison. A lot of these people were arrested. They were taken in. Did not work on expunging their records. Did not work on keeping them out of prison, enshrining their right to protest on the campus, once again, at the school they go to. No, what she instead decided to do was talk about how in the middle of a genocide, the beginnings of a genocide, but, at the middle of it, as far as we knew it, this genocide is still going on. But at the time, it was, the middle of it. Point is that she wanted to remind every single American that they actually had, or would aspire to have, the most lethal fighting force in America.
America, we must also be steadfast in advancing our security and values abroad. As Vice President, I have confronted threats to our security, negotiated with foreign leaders, strengthened our alliances, and engaged with our brave troops overseas. As Commander-in-Chief, I will ensure America always has the strongest, most lethal fighting force in the world.
And this is on the midst of a genocide, guys. And I recognize that what's going on in Venezuela and in Cuba and all these other places around the world, would Kamala Harris have been as cruel as Donald Trump? Obviously not. Nobody thinks that. But I guess, why are we having to decide between somebody that is cruel and somebody that is kind of cruel? Most American people are struggling. The grocery prices are skyrocketing. Children aren't able to find jobs after college. Schools are having ICE come into their buildings. And we still have not seen Democrats change their message on stopping this. We have seen some Democrats talk about abolish ICE, but by and large, the concept of reform ICE is more of what's being done by the establishment. And in fact, the Democrats and their capitulations on the border and their capitulations on wanting to retain a safe border would be used against them in the Pam Bondi hearing that happened yesterday.
For 5 minutes.
You fast forward.
Of immigrants. We're also a nation of laws. Undocumented workers broke our immigration laws, and I believe that they must be held accountable.
They've committed a crime, deport them. No questions asked, they're gone.
No great nation can be in a position where they can't control their borders.
While we need to address the issue of immigration and the challenge we have of undocumented people in our country, we certainly don't want any more coming in.
Every place in this country are rightly disturbed by the large numbers of illegal aliens entering our country. The jobs they hold might otherwise be held by citizens or legal immigrants.
And that's not true, right? Is that the government, because they are the government, can just create as many jobs as they want to. It just depends on what the goals of the nation are when they create those jobs. If we wanted to build manufacturing factories, we would do that. If we wanted to build chips factories, we would do that. But the point is that for the Democrats and the Republicans, deportation has been a center of their policies for a very long time. Now to the point where there is complete collaboration with the Democrats on the Republicans on one very specific issue. Epstein. Is that Epstein on both angles, you have Democratic and Republican collaboration on releasing the files and getting the victims justice. But then you also have the situation of Democrats being in the files and wanting to protect those people. Donald Trump, funny enough, in his first run for the presidential bid against Hillary Clinton, has mentioned why these Democratic politicians will never change the tax code is because they don't get their funding from the people. They get their funding from billionaires. And those billionaires showed up in the Epstein files.
Have carried interest. One of the greatest provisions for people like me, to be honest with you. I give up a lot when I run because I knock out the tax code.
He used to sound coherent. I forget.
And she could have done this years ago, by the way. She was a United States senator. She complains that Donald Trump took advantage of the tax code. Well, why didn't she change it? Why didn't you change it when you were a senator? The reason you didn't is that all your friends take the same advantage that I do. And I do. You have provisions in the tax code that, frankly, we could change. But you wouldn't change it because all of these people give you the money so you can take negative ads on Donald Trump.
And while he's not completely right here, he is majority right, is that they have the same donors. They have the exact same donors. And it turns out those donors are elite pedophile, vampires that are basically like eating children at this point, is what we found out in the files. And so that is why they will never change the code. And that gets us to where we are now, right? Is that why didn't Hillary Clinton run on protecting trans rights? Why didn't she run on ending some of these forever wars that America is in, whether they be sanctions, whether they be, more like Cold War-esque, as in like not sending bombs? Why didn't they run on that? And why are they refusing to run on that? The reality is that their donors keep them in power, and their donors want to keep their money. There is not a situation where people can be both billionaires and good people. And there just isn't. Is that there is money in war. Apparently, there's even more money in child sex trafficking. But Republicans, and a lot of Republicans, have made their decision on things, saying, you know what, we don't care about the money. We want these people brought to justice. And the Democrats, the reality of the situation, these investigations started under Biden. They started under Obama. Biden had the files. Why didn't he release them? It wasn't leftists saying, hey, don't release them. Like, it was Democrats. It was Democrats yelling at the left saying, why do y'all care about this stupid stuff? Donald Trump is going to be worse. We know Donald Trump is going to be worse. Republicans know Donald Trump is going to be worse. Democrats know, liberals know Donald Trump is going to be worse. The point is that they are not running on safety. They are not running on creating more laws, creating more safe laws for people to get access to the things they need. They are just running on keeping things the way they are. And as most people know today, things are kind of broken. Now, we don't need Hakeem Jeffries with a bat to tell us that. The point is that there is no sense of legislation coming down from the Democratic Party in order to prosecute these people. In fact, they have hidden it until it was another administration that was in office before they got released. And so what we know now, Hakeem Jeffries quite literally emailed Jeffrey Epstein. What is this? In 2013, he was a convicted pedophile in 2009. For the record, is that Hakeem Jeffries does not need to talk to his base because the people that he had access to, connections to, was Epstein and pedophiles. He got his money from them. That's how he won these elections. And the point is that Hasan Piker has been calling this out for a very long time. And I have seen a lot of people kind of yelling at him. And there's a lot of good reason to yell at him. I'm not telling you don't yell at him. Yell at him as much as you want. I don't care. But definitely do not yell at him for his take on legislation or policies or what the Democrats are doing. They simply do not care. In fact, once again, they cared about stuff, saying things like border. They cared about capitulating on the border because they thought they were going to get some of those deportation voters. When it turns out is that a lot of those deportation voters care more about the Epstein files.
How many of you are satisfied? You can clap. Satisfied with the results of the Epstein investigation? Clap. Okay, I told you to clap. You guys aren't listening. I'm not going to grade you on a curve. So I was going to get to that.
What did he just yell? We're not satisfied?
How many of you are not satisfied with the results of the investigation?
Kamala Harris had access to the files. She had access to the files. Gavin Newsom might not have, need to release any kind of Epstein files, but there are things that he is not running on. Genuinely not running on. The DC job market has been crushed. Thousands of federal workers laid off and fired under Donald Trump. I have not seen a single Democrat run on rehiring these people, giving them back pay for some of these things. Donald Trump ran on that. He ran on that for the Jan 6ers. He ran on getting them out of prison. And for a lot of conservatives, that was something they cared about. The Democrats have not run on any meaningful things. For example, like restoring DC's jobs, getting more jobs, preventing all of these things from happening again. No, because their donors are the same donors that the Republicans have. Their donors ask them to not talk about these things. Their donors don't need jobs. They're billionaires. Black unemployment has been surging. And there has been this effect of Zoomers not being able to find jobs and Black people being fired from their jobs for just being too woke. And the reality is that nobody at their job is talking about wokeness or politics. Most people get in there and they do what they're supposed to do and they leave. But because of the unwinding of things like DEI policies or whatever it is that they have lost their jobs. I have not seen a single Democrat run on restoring their jobs. I've not seen a single Democrat run on getting these people exonerated, getting them out of prison, emptying some of the prisons. Most of the people in prison, as we know today, didn't commit a crime. And that will forever be on their record what happened under the Donald Trump administration. Less than 14% of those arrested by ICE in Trump's first year back in office had violent criminal records. And I don't know where we are now, but is that, what is it? Less than 2% of those arrested by ICE over the past year had homicidal or sexual assault charges. Less than 2%. Now you have prison populations that are full of protesters. They're filled with so-called anarchists and Antifa and all these different things that they call progressives, right? But the reality of the situation is most of these people do not actually align with communist or leftist ideas. And instead of liberals saying, hey, can you do this? Can you do this? Can you please get these people out of prison? Can you please restore some of our finances? For the people that had to move out of DC, people had to move out of DC. I think that's one of the things mentioned in this article is that, yeah, homes for sale is up by 64%. There's not a single person in the Democratic Party that is running on making these things better. They are just they're running on just not doing what Trump is doing. Is that a good strategy, I guess is the question. Well, again, let Kamala's election be kind of like a guidance for that. And I think that when it comes to what the Democratic Party needs to do is actually have policies, take a stance on some of these things. Is that, will people be safer if everything stops? The answer is yes. But everything is just going to stop until another Republican gets into office and abuses some of these rules and policies that we have in order to, hurt black and brown people and trans people. Is that, for example, it was ruled under the Supreme Court during Joe Biden that the presidential just had immunity to most laws. So when it comes to things like free college, for example, he can do that. He can make college free. You're going to say that the Supreme Court said it was unconstitutional. He can do it illegally. Every single thing Donald Trump is doing now is being done illegally. And I think a lot of liberals are waking up. It just turns out that a lot of these, more like liberal content creators that are being paid by dark money chorus, as exposed by, I think it was Taylor Lorenz, is they have a mission to target the left, because the reality is that Democrats do not want to shift left. If it was that big of a deal, if it was going to lose an election, and if they wanted to win an election, then they would do that. But they don't. You have people in Memphis right now dying of smog poisoning, of the carbon poisoning coming from these data centers. Where are the Democrats on that? Where are the Democrats on talking about data centers and pollution and electricity costs and housing costs and like all these different things? They are just saying, look at how bad Donald Trump is. We're not that. That is not a winning strategy. And it is very clear that things like that will not win an election. You cannot shame people into voting. And for all of Mamdani's election was so important, I think, for a lot of different reasons. For the main reason being that he was able to mobilize a group of voters that do not vote. And the reality of the situation is that there are more non-voters to gain than centrist Republicans that somewhat vote Democrat, to win. Campaigning with Liz Cheney did not win Kamala Harris any favors. She lost the election with $1 billion in funding. $1 billion in funding, guys, $1 billion in funding. And so just to speak on this a little bit more is that there's a lot of good reason to hate Hasan Piker. For example, I'm going to show you one.
We are young. There's a fire in our soul. We go big or go home together. We are young.
What in the Obama 08 stop the drama with the what is that, a fedora?
That's right. We're black and we're white, but we all will be tonight forever. 'Cause we will never die.
What is
No one I know will ever die.
Once again, there are so many good reasons to not like Hasan Piker. But I really do feel like his take on voting third party, for example, is not a bad one. Most liberals understand that our two-party system is bad, and the risk avoidant voting has not won us any favors. Is that you have to have somebody that is running on climate, and that is running in a strongman way. Unfortunately, you need somebody that is going to say, we are going to free these people that have been locked up. We are going to exonerate them. We are going to give them jobs. We need to save this country. As the situation gets more dire, I see people becoming a little bit more radicalized in like both directions. The point is that centrism and the rule of law is out of the window. Nobody cares about it anymore. Is that Pam Bondi and the Donald Trump administration has not been doing anything by the law, by the book, and any Democrat claiming to stick by it is just enabling the current situation that's happening. But once again, that's kind of their thing. You have police officers pushing them down the stairs. Not a single Democrat called for accountability for this kind of thing. And so why is it any different when it comes to ICE? Why is it any different when it comes to ICE? It is not when something happens to you that you should care about. You should see these things happening across the states and see, oh, that's going to come for me, because it did. It did come for people in Minneapolis, and it did come for people in Washington, D.C. And the reality of the situation is that there's no discernible policies that the Democrats have that they are running on that make people want to vote for them, make people get off the couch. Is that, I think it was like yesterday also, is that voter ID laws might be coming in. There are no Democrats saying we are going to unwind that. Unnaturally silent. And so once again, hate Hasan Piker if you will, but for good reasons. Oh God.